Welcome to Basic Black. Some of you are joining us on our broadcast, and others of you are joining us on our digital platforms. I'm Callie Crossley, host of Under the Radar 89.7. Tonight, new leaders. The new leaders are thought to be the most diverse of any class of lawmakers elected to the Massachusetts State House. They may be newly elected, but they are well-known faces in their communities of color, communities facing some of the most challenging problems in the state, from lack of affordable housing to discriminatory health care. They came in on a wave of young people's energy and votes, and they say they are eager to tackle the tough issues. Will this next generation of local political leaders be able to break barriers their predecessors could not? Joining us this evening, State Representative Judith García of Suffolk County's 11th District, comprising Chelsea and parts of Everett. State Representative Christopher Worrell, representing Suffolk County's 5th District, which comprises parts of Boston's Roxbury and Dorchester neighborhoods. And State Representative Sam Montaño, Suffolk County's 15th District, which makes up a majority of Jamaica Plain, parts of Roxbury, and the back of the Hill section of Mission Hill. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Well, as I said, you all are not unknown in your communities, but I think you may be unknown to the larger context of viewers tonight. So let's get a little information about all of you out there. First of all, I'll start with you, Christopher, because you replaced Liz Miranda, so people may think of that as her district, as yours now.
Yes.
And it seems that you're a part of a new political dynasty.
That's what they say, Callie. My brother is District 4 City Councilor Brian Worrell. We're just excited to be here, and we have a big family in the district, and we've been doing this community work for a long time.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the community work you were doing before.
So the community work we've been doing before, when there was a pandemic, we made sure that our people, the people on our street, the people throughout the city of Boston were they had the necessities to have the COVID vaccines. So we did pop-up shops where we stuck over 500 residents with the COVID vaccine, and making sure that they had the education, making sure it came from people that they trust, and making sure that, you know, there was a big immigration population in our district. So we didn't want them to feel like there was
they were overlooked.
Exactly. Overlooked, or just that case of, you know, is ICE going to get us? No.
Right.
Just come in, get your COVID vaccination, get some free masks, hand sanitizer, and we also gave out food as well. And we do an annual turkey drive throughout our district as well.
All right, great.
Yeah.
Sam Montaño, you replaced Nika Elguardo in your district, and again, very familiar to your community. Let's talk about some of your work. Women's Shelter, also working in other community service organizations.
Yeah, so my district is actually now half of what was Rep. Malia and Rep. Elguardo, so it's a nice, good part of JP, Mission Hill, and Roxbury, like you said. I came to Boston originally to do city year. So I was at the McCormick Middle School in Dorchester. I worked with like sheltered English immersion populations, so it was nice coming to Boston and being in a population of folks who speak Spanish and were trying to navigate the culture, because I was doing the same thing as I arrived here. After that, I went to what was at the time Crittenton Women Union, is now Empath, and I worked in the congregate shelter. So that was where I really got to understand the dynamics of the neighborhoods, how there's such cultural differences between, you know, what is South Boston, Dorchester, East Boston. And that shelter, you had to at least be in your second trimester, have a child, and be a woman to live there. So it was an amazing experience to see how our communities and housing vouchers and the shelter system were just not working for a majority of folks. And that's kind of how I transitioned to community development and organizing, because I wanted to have a deeper impact and get at the root of issues instead of just trying to have a Band-Aid again and again and again and trying to find people housing without addressing the community issues that were they were coming up against.
I got it. Now, you two are actual newbies in terms of politics, elected office rather, but you're not. Judith, you were elected to the Chelsea City Council, so you're well known again in a different way to your constituency. So tell us a little bit about being on the council and some of the work you did on the council. Well, actually, why you even wanted to be on the council to begin with.
Well, you know, I have had the honor and privilege to represent the heart of Chelsea for about 7 years. And when I was 23 years old, I returned from college to the community that raised me. I've been a daughter of Chelsea. I'm the proud daughter of a single mother who to this very day is an essential worker. She works at a local hot dog factory in Chelsea. And when I came back to my community, there was absolutely a total lack of representation in our municipal government. A community that is predominantly Latino, over 70% of our population is Latino, and we had 0 representatives at the council level. So at that time, I decided to run along with other individuals who also are Latino, and we flipped the power scheme at the time, becoming majority minority council. And since then, I've been able to really focus at the local level, making waves, making sure that we are giving and providing the services that our community so eagerly needs. And you can't have that if you do not understand or have lived experience. So I've been honored to do that, and now 32 years later, I am here being the first woman to ever represent Chelsea in its single seat and along with Everett. So it's a great honor.
Something that, Sam, you mentioned, and I just want to point out in your district as well, Judith, is that there was redistricting. So a lot of these districts have shifted. There were 2 districts split in Chelsea, and now they're united.
Yes.
And you said this is very important for representation for Chelsea.
Absolutely. Chelsea has been a community that has been clamoring political clout, and we were divided. You know, we had representation at the time in terms of having 2 elected officials, but what Chelsea really needed was one person to represent the whole city and open the avenue and the pathway for a person of color to run for this seat, and that was impossible. But now, thanks to the leadership of some of our colleagues' leadership at the State House, especially Representative Mike Moran, who led the redistricting along with other organizers and coalitions, we have been able to provide a voice to these communities that need it so much and that are facing many challenges.
Did your district shift a little bit, Christopher?
Yes,
Okay.
it did. So again, to make Representative Judith's seat, they had to take out Liz Malia's seat. She retired, so I moved over into Seaver Street, Humboldt. Sam shifted, and that opened up the space for Judith's seat to open up and unite those 2 communities.
Okay.
Yes.
And Sam, as you said, your district shifted with the redistricting as well. So now let's talk about the issues that you guys face. You're coming in strong. You really know your communities. Those folks put you in, and they feel like they really have a hand on you. They know you because you've been in those streets, you've been in those rooms doing the work, so they know it. But good grief, there's some hard stuff. Housing's at the top. Amplify Latinx just put out the first statewide poll talking about how Latinos are well not serviced in the state, and the main issues concerning them, and housing's at the top. So I'll let you start, Sam, with what's your focus. I know you can't be all things to everybody, but how have you decided you're going to concentrate?
Yeah, so I actually come from an affordable housing background. I was at Jamaica Plain Neighborhood Development Corporation doing organizing and advocacy for 6 years. So housing is my #1 focus. I have a rent stabilization bill that we've co-filed with Rep. Rogers. We have a bill that is working towards allowing folks who have been criminally justice involved to access preferences to be able to get housing, because we know one of the ways to keep people from recidivism is provide a safe house, provide a place they can afford, and then also just looking at different ways that we can develop housing more quickly and speed it through the pipeline. So housing, environmental justice, a little bit of that work related to transits, and then mental health and substance use and abuse. That's a really personal topic to me, and it's something that impacts the community as well. In what ways can we provide stabilization for folks who are looking to enter recovery programs? In what ways can we provide other resources, make it more of like a hub model or wraparound model, so that folks are able to enter recovery if they're looking to do that, and not just being there for 5 days, a month, understanding that it takes a year for your brain to reset or more, and for you to figure out how to get these life skills. And the more folks that are able to access that through housing, access that through community supports, the stronger community we can have, and a more diverse and economically stable community we can have. So that's what we're hoping to work on in JP.
Okay. Now, remarkably, your list looks a lot like Sam's list, because housing's at the top.
Yes.
I want you to tell me about the Section 8 proposal you're thinking about, or what your issues are around that. But you also have gun control and environment on your list. So tell me first about Section 8 housing.
So Section 8 housing, just how Section 8 pays into a landlord, we're looking at different ways on how Section 8 could pay into someone's mortgages. Growing up, my grandparents came here from Jamaica, bought a 2-family house on Fuller Street, sent for my 11 aunts and uncles. My mom then started working at the hospital. Met my father in the cafeteria, called it Cafeteria Love. Had the opportunity to live on the first floor of my grandparents' 2-family. Not paying market rent, but having the opportunity to one day buy their own. They bought on Hewan Street, 2-family. I met my wife in church. We moved into that first floor house at my parents' house. Not paying market rent, but having the understanding one day you're going to buy your own. 3 years ago, we bought our own on Normandy Street, passing generational wealth. Those houses are still in the family, and we know how important it is to own in our community. So one thing we want to do, knowing that a vast majority of our community are on Section 8, is seeing how we can make that Section 8 voucher work for our mortgages. Also, we have gun control and quality of life. I represent the most people of color in the Commonwealth, and our streets are stricken with gun violence. Our streets, we breathe some of the worst air in the state of Massachusetts. And when I drive to the State House 10, 15 minutes away, they breathe some of the best air in Massachusetts. And there's a life expectancy of 30 years between the two. So we're just fighting for quality of life, gun violence, and I think we're going to do a great job.
Okay. Judith, you're about to do repeat on some of the issues that you pushed forward as a city councilor. You know, housing for certain at the top of it. You already were instrumental with the wage theft law, making sure that stopped, because 80% of your population are essential workers. So in some ways, the rest of the state benefited off the backs of the people who were living in your community, because they kept everything going during the pandemic. So, and we know that now. I think the rest of us can understand that in real ways. So how will you focus? Because you got a lot on your plate. What will be your essential focuses in the State House now?
That's an excellent question. I represent 2 communities, 2 gateway communities, Everett and Chelsea. These are communities that deal with every challenge you can think of. They're environmental justice communities. They're dealing with transportation issues. They're dealing with housing. It's a crisis, and the level of urgency that we have right now is huge. And, you know, I always think of this with this representation that we're now bringing to the State House. It comes with a lot of responsibility. And in my case now, I'm really focusing on 3 things. And one is, yes, housing is at the very top. But 2, I look at our state, and we have been leaders of health for the nation, yet healthcare remains inequitable. Right? And I think that if we had the shared responsibility and commitment that we did in 2006, we need to continue with that shared responsibility today after this pandemic, where we know Black and brown communities were disproportionately affected. We need that shared responsibility to make sure that at the center of our healthcare is equity. You know, I can tell you that during COVID, I saw and I heard my community suffer in ways that other cities in this Commonwealth did not. Chelsea became the epicenter of this pandemic. And to this day, we're still struggling. There are still lines in my community that are facing food insecurity. Gladys Vega, who is a dear and beloved activist in the state of Massachusetts. powerful, incredibly powerful. I still remember her sharing stories of going to the emergency room with people from Chelsea who were turned away and sent home to die. And we cannot continue like this. So that's why right now one of my biggest pieces of legislation that I am sharing and have the huge honor to co-sponsor with Representative Bud Williams and Senator Pavel Payano and Senator Liz Miranda is pushing equity at the center and forefront of our healthcare system. So those are two areas that are important to me, along with youth development. It's no secret that my campaign and my success happened thanks to the energy and the commitment of youth members, and I think we need to invest in that next generation of leaders.
Well, it was important for all of you, actually, on the national level, as we've seen, the midterms were turned because of the young people's energy and interest. And so they're a powerhouse now. The cohort of, I can't remember which generation it is bigger than baby boomers, finally, some would say. So there's a whole different lens. You're all post-civil rights generation. You're also coming into a very interesting situation. Massachusetts is predominantly Democratic in the State House, and for the first time in a long time, the executive branch is also Democratic. So how will you measure success? Because nobody wants to hear it, that you did not have the power to get together and make some of these changes. What do you consider that a benefit, or are you concerned about, maybe having to fight uphill because it looks like it's going to be easier? Sam.
Well, Democrats are as diverse as Latinos. There's not one way to be Latino. There's not one way to be Democratic. There's not a set of values that are central to identifying as a Democrat. You can identify as a Democrat however you want. So there are folks like me who are more left and progressive who want to push reform in a way that really gets to the root of equity and do it in a fast way and kind of disrupts the power cycles of who has held power, who has held wealth. And obviously, you have to find a middle ground, and that's part of being in the legislature. There's 159 other reps, and so you're all trying to move together, but some folks are going to want to move slower than you. So it's truly about that relationship building and how you can find the place to get where everyone will move. And it is frustrating to the community, I think, to be like, why we have Democratic-led governments, why are we taking so long to feed these reforms that people so desperately need? But it's because we're diverse.
Okay.
So
do you agree?
Yes, I agree. But one thing that I'm trying to push alongside with my brother is the Black economic empowerment. When we push the Black economic empowerment, since we have a Democratic governor, everything's rolling in the way. Now it's time. We need to get a push for our Black. What we need more housing. We need housing ownership. We need economic within business, minority-owned businesses, and the list continues. So I'm taking the wave of this top-heavy Democratic lead and making sure my people in the 5th Suffolk and Black and brown people are taken care of.
Okay, now I just want to point out, just interestingly, you and your brother are going to have a joint office together.
Yes.
So you're doing a coalescing on a different level as well.
Yes,
all right.
Yes, and bringing the resources to the community. That's what we want to do, bring resources.
I'm just pointing out they're looking for you because that's executive branch, that's across the city council, and, all right, just they'll be looking for you. Judith, what say you about the Democratic power base and what community folks will be looking, in terms of successes, as Sam has said, perhaps too great an expectation because there are differences in the party as well.
We're in week 3 of the job, right? And we're newcomers. And so I can tell you that
step to it, Judith. Week 3 of the job. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's really week 3 of the job, and I think it's important to point that out because Massachusetts and the new government now just made history, and we're diversifying our legislature, and I think that's exciting, and I think it creates a room for opportunity to come together and really bring new ideas, right? We can't forget that we just selected all women who broke glass ceilings, right? There's 5 women in power right now at statewide office, and I think we all bring different ideas. And for me right now, my focus is really cultivating those relationships at the House level, but also seeing what other leaders are going to propose so we can work together. And we can't forget the power of organizing and the coalitions that have been built outside of the State House that can help us move and advance policy forward.
Okay. I'm curious about young people energy. Now, we talked about them helping to get you in office. We've acknowledged that. That's data-based. But again, you all are young. So how, no shade to people who came before, but how do you see your lens impacting how you will manage those relationships and how you will focus on what you think is important in terms of moving forward on legislation? Sam.
I mean, I think that we're navigating a global world in a way that a lot of folks just weren't able to because of the internet, because of access to resources, because of the more folks who the expectation is that you go to a university and get a degree. So in that sense, we're coming along with a wider exposure, I think, than folks before us. There's also a shift and a focus in redefining and resetting the table, who's at the table, and how folks are coming to the table. And that means you have to shift language, that means you have to evolve. And I would say that the folks who have been able to make an impact are those folks who take the effort every day to stay relevant in that sense and to educate themselves. And so for us, clearly we've made the effort to stay relevant in that sense, to connect to the community, to make that space, and to bring folks with us. And that's kind of how you get to these spaces. But I think that's one of the defining differences between generations, is that we have access to ways to blow up our platforms in ways that other folks didn't, through social media, through the internet. We have access to learning about folks across the country just because of what they're sharing. And so we're inundated with like all these different perspectives and all these different opportunities to learn these perspectives, which is also a double-edged sword because sometimes we can silo ourselves and not get those other perspectives. But I think that's it. We are living in a global world, and it's a whole different place.
Okay, Christopher. Judith, go ahead. What would you add?
I agree a lot with what you're saying, and also I think what is wonderful about this generation is the level of accountability that they're placing on us, right? This is a new generation that is really pushing. It's more empathetic, is more involved, and they see their power in their collective. So I am telling you, my campaign was run and engined by over 22 young kids ages between 13 and 22, and they were passionate, and they had complete passion and commitment to the movement, but they are also not afraid to call you out for issues that matter to them, from environmental justice to more representation to transparency. And I think that's what makes this particular group of activists even more special.
Big management consultant Carla Harris has written in her book about leadership that in the old days, the big boss would say jump and you would say how high, and now with these young people they say why.
Yes, that's correct.
That sort of sums it up. Okay,
so
Chris.
I had a different approach to it because my community, the 5th Suffolk, has the worst voter turnout in the state of Massachusetts. So if we have the worst voter turnout, our people aren't coming to the polls. The reason why we got them to the polls is because we gave them, I'm Chris. I'm the guy you see at Stop and Shop. I'm the guy that's, we played BNBL with. I'm the guy that's gonna be fighting for you. Have your faith in me, and I'm bringing you to the table. All of us are coming to the table. So what our campaign did before even announcing was get our young people registered to vote, knocking on doors, getting them excited to vote, letting them know they do have a voice. We need to unite this voice and ask for things we want. Certain things we get looked over because of, some people just look at the voting records and be like, that community is not active. We're trying to bring that activeness into our community. We're trying to lift up young people with a big voice, and that's why some of the interns that we're going to be taking on this summer, making sure they have no political knowledge or history, and bringing them under the Golden Dome to give them a new lens on life. This is how a bill works. Schoolhouse rocks.
Yeah.
I am a bill.
Right.
I am a bill.
Right.
So we are trying to bring together a coalition of Black and brown young people to really take the reins and start their own political career. Hopefully not my seat, but throughout the seats throughout the Commonwealth, and I'm excited for that.
All right. I want to bring this conversation to a close this way. Not a policy question, not a political question, but a personal one. Why personally did you want to take on this work, Sam? Please explain it to the rest of us who are saying, I wouldn't do that job.
You know, I grew up in a family that had no housing security. We moved every year. I think I've moved every year up until 2 years ago since I was 13. So I haven't stayed in a place more than a year for over half my life. And my dad struggled with substance abuse. My mom was a low-income single mom for a long time. I had trouble. I didn't go traditionally. I went to community college to help support my family, and then I went to UCLA. Like, I've had these quick routes, and so to me, being able to impact the system that created those situations is essential.
Okay, Chris.
I'm the son of immigrants. My parents came from Barbados and Jamaica. I've seen them work 6 jobs in between the two just to put a house over my my brother and sister's head, clothes on our feet. I've seen the iniquities, lived it every day, and I wanted to have and be that person that brought change to government that you could feel and touch.
Okay. Last seconds, you, Judith.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, you know, I've always believed that government should be about fixing the social issues that impact us all. I am a proud daughter of a woman who came from Honduras seeking the American dream. And I know the struggles that they face to this very day, the chronic trauma, the chronic stress. And I believe that we can create a government that empowers all and that really advances us to equity.
But you could have let somebody else do that. You didn't have to do it.
But I think I could do it best.
Okay. All right. I want to just say it was a great conversation with all of you. You know, you are run in poetry, you govern in prose, so we'll be watching you. Yeah. All right. Thank you all. That's the end of our broadcast, the end of our show. Thank you for joining us. Now stay with us as we continue our conversation on our digital platforms, YouTube and Facebook. I'm Callie Crossley, host of Under the Radar 89.7. We're on YouTube and Facebook with our post show, continuing our discussion on new leaders who are here with me. What was your first impression when you hit the State House? And, you know, you won, you're there. What was it, Chris?
So I was there before as a aide to Senator Nick Collins, but I felt like a unicorn walking throughout the hallways. But with this diverse class right now, 8 Latinx, 2 black men, and, you know, looking around the bullpen, it feels great. It feels amazing. You know, being there before and seeing the class that I'm with, it feels amazing. There's some great change coming.
How about you, Sam?
You know, I'm the only out person of color in the whole legislature, so sometimes I get in my head about it, but everyone has been incredibly welcoming in the House and in the Senate. There's not like a formal onboarding process, and it's very much you make of it what you will. So that's been a shift to like have you set your agenda and you figure it out and you work with your community.
Yeah, there's no one holding your hand.
Yeah, it's you.
Yeah, it's definitely you.
Interesting. Judith?
Well, every time I go in, it feels like a palace.
Yeah.
And I will say every time I try to soak it in, because I always tell myself, wow, this is where it happens. This is where we can affect change. And actually yesterday, one of my interns just began, kid from Chelsea, he's been with me from the campaign, he's only 16 years old. And I could see it in his eyes, the hope. And he kept just looking and saying, wow, we did it. And this is what it took. And just listening to him and his hope and watching him walk down the hallways with me, which I still get lost, but it's incredibly to soak it all in and realize we're there and we're there to get the work done.
And you know, it's something I've heard from others to be in a position where, you know, your voice, you have one vote like everybody else. And so it's in some ways a reverse from other situations they've had in their life where people were, you know, over talking, if you will, and saying, well, when I speak, of course, everyone must listen. Guess what? I got the same vote you have, so you have to listen to me as well. So it's an interesting situation for persons of color, particularly in that situation. Now, I recall a few years back, the staff Do you all know this story? There was staff of color who got together and did a protest about their ill treatment in the State House.
Yeah.
And they were concerned about not only ill treatment but being overlooked, said they were not considered as part of the whole environment.
Body.
Yeah, the whole body. You guys heard any of that? Or, I don't know how much staff is there now.
Yeah.
There wasn't much then.
I was there when those conversations started happening. Then I left to go to the city of Boston. But like I said, it felt like a unicorn. It felt real. Being the only black man and certain tables, certain seats. You're looking around, then, Jack and Jill may go out to lunch, and you're left like, hey, what's up?
Right,
I'm here.
Yeah.
And they rolled like a silo. And, I'm eating lunch at my desk, like, where's everyone at? So, yeah, those conversations were real, and that was going on. But this new class, we eat lunch. I haven't got the opportunity to eat lunch with these two phenomenal women.
Not yet.
Not yet, because they're shining. But we eat lunch together now. The diversities of it. One of our classmates brought Dominican rice. Like, if you guys want some, come eat some. So it's a different feel that's coming in the State House.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, because that was. It seemed shocking at the time for others, not for the folk who were expressing that. So I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
Talk about that shift a little bit more of realizing. To me, what you described, Sam, sounded like going from high school to college. When you got to college, and I set my own schedule. I got to figure out what's going on. A little bit more of that, because not many of us will be in those roles that you all are in.
Yeah. So you get there. You get some of the supplies you need. You give yourself a tour of the building. I think one of the nice things is our staff is onboarded, I would say, more than we're onboarded. We don't really have like a formal onboarding process. So it's really up to you to build those relationships in the house and ask other folks in the house, like, how does this work? And how do I do this? And how do I go about doing that? So you have to have the initiative to ask someone to coffee and not feel like awkward if they tell you no, which no one tells you no.
Yeah.
But it's really empowering to understand that you can have a whatever impact on your community that you want to have, because no one is telling you how to do it.
Which is refreshing. Yeah. Anybody want to add to that?
Yeah, and I think the other part of it is striking a balance between being in the district and being on the ground in both of in my case, two of my communities, and also coming back to the State House and getting to learn how to navigate the mannerisms and the culture there, and building and fostering those relationships with future colleagues, because I think we've said it here many times, we're one vote out of 159, therefore we need to get to know each other and compromise, and be willing to compromise sometimes to advance the things and the agendas that we have.
I agree with both of them. They took the words out of my mouth.
I think one of the things that is going to be refreshing about this class is that when you go from one to, wait a minute, let me just be clear. We're not talking about a massive number, but for Massachusetts, it's a massive number. That's why I'm putting it this way. But to go from one or two, because I'm thinking about poor Sonia Chang Diaz, right? You know, I mean, she's really all alone in that. And so not only does she have the unicorn experience, she has maybe what you're saying is, somehow an outlier, when in fact, she's representing so many people. For her experience is exactly not an outlier. So at least you have some overlapping opportunities, it seems to me, to support each other and saying, yep, that's what's happening. That's the experience.
And the great thing about it is, even though all three of us have three different districts, we are fighting for the same thing, as we've seen in what we were talking about. We're fighting for the same thing. So now it's like, Judith, how do we look at affordable home ownership? Sam, how do we look at gun violence and quality of life, and us coming all together and making it happen? passing legislation and making it happen.
So, go ahead.
I think it's also like something that communities of color have been trying to do for a while is shift the power dynamics.
Yeah.
So for instance, last session, in the 192nd session, I think the only person of color in the leadership of the House was Leader Frank Moran. So there's still a disparity in how we are able to access higher levels of power and really have an influence on that decision making. And that just comes with time and building relationships.
And more folks.
The more folks there are, it's inevitable. You have to put us somewhere, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, you have such short terms, so you're almost immediately facing with re-election, which is that like a pressure as you come in because you can't really relax into what you're doing because you got to start thinking about that.
In politics, we have a saying: "You're building the plane as you fly it."
Yeah.
So that is pretty much, I can tell you from my personal experience, it was the first time I ran for state representative, so it was the first time campaigning. I'm the only woman who ran for this specific seat. I had a very difficult primary and then a general election against a Republican, building that plane as I'm flying it, and then you're seated and you're expected to pass legislation within 2 weeks of being in office. So there's a lot of questions, and again, there's a lot of that sense of you're learning as you go.
Okay. As we know, as we look around the country, state legislatures have become increasingly more important. Now, as some of the state legislatures around the country are very different in tone and temperament of what you will find in Massachusetts, but nevertheless, it seems to me that your import has become even more so as a result of, I think, a lot of us voters are recognizing the power of the state legislature. I'm not sure in the past that folks got that, because people would wait and vote in the presidential election and then that's it, and not understanding that the power to control our daily lives is really right here in the state. How do you all see making that distinction for folk? Because that's part, I believe, Chris, of why people do not choose to vote. They don't see that connection.
They don't. They don't, and that's what we had to bring. The great thing that we did, again, was, register so many people to vote and also letting them know the importance of your vote. We don't see the politicians. You don't see me, I'm here. I'm here. I go down the street and shoot hoops with my son. And just bringing the legislators to the community. One of the great things in my campaign was a court that we grew up playing basketball with. I brought Ed Markey to and brought the community, like, you guys saying you guys don't see these guys, these women. He's here. We knocked doors with Ayanna Presley and throughout Roxbury, bringing the people with power to the people in the community. So more of that, and throughout our community, more of that touch and feel of government.
And also, what a politician looks like now is different from what they may have the image of.
Yes.
All right. So how will you measure your success, let's say, after your first year? You, not anybody else. How will you?
I think for me, if people know what we tried to move, what legislation we tried to move, and they understand it, and it's clear and makes sense to them, and they feel like we're making progress, and they know who I am, and that they can reach out to us. And people who have never reached out to the state legislature are reaching out, that would be a measure of progress for me.
All right, Chris?
Oh, man, how am I going to measure? I'm going to measure just on the fact that my people, the 5th Suffolk, feels like they have a seat at the table, that they want to go out to vote, that they feel that solutions are being made for every issue. We have, from the time I sat in that seat, my phone has been ringing with different issues, from child support to there's a bus stop missing in my community. And just that turnaround service of getting these solutions. I wanted to have magnets on, call Representative Worrell with any issue you need. And again, having that district office, bringing the resources to the community where people know about. They know about, there's a program on whatever, getting your hot water back on. There's a program on helping with your electricity. Bringing all these programs to the community where they don't feel like, I need to work harder, I need to pick up another job, but taking the state resources and also making an effective change in the people's lives in the 5th Suffolk.
Okay. First year measure of success for you personally.
Well, personally, I will say I come from a community that's been clamoring power, and they've had to fight for every dollar, and they make $1 out of 30 cents, right? And I come from a community that are organizers, activists, and for the first time, I want to give them the credit, work in community for community, to let them know that they're also part of this seat. This seat is theirs, and we can work together to advance policy. So for me, measurement of success is working together, getting things done, and giving credit to where credit is due.
Okay. Well, thank you for your first trip to Basic Black. You'll be back, and it won't be as friendly, probably. But nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.